you all have the things that you dread, don't you? In my personal life, there's this moment where I get a whiff of something coming from Simon, our youngest. He's 2, and he's kind of in the potty training stage right now. But there are moments where you get the whiff of the thing coming from a baby, you know, from the wrong side of the baby. And if you're a good dad, in those moments you walk away and go change the oil on your car, right? That's what you do. Because I dread opening up what's inside of it and finding the present that he's left in there, right? Have you all experienced that dread that you have that comes over? I also, I worked at a car dealership, some of you know that, and I had this part of my job that I just dreaded every single day. Every single day in the morning when I got there and right before I left and went home for work, I had to help carry a 25-foot banner that was on a sign frame out to about a football field distance out and put it on the road, and then we would zip tie it up, and then every day we'd go out and cut the zip ties and we'd carry it back in, right? The whole thing happened because there was this union that came along, and we had done some remodeling work, and the union put a sign out front because we didn't go with their bid, and it said, "Shame on Subaru of Wichita," this huge sign. And so we made a huge sign that said, "For having such low prices." And so I was a part of coming up with the creative of that, right? I was like, this is so funny. And then for a year, every single day, morning and evening, I had to help carry the sign that I helped come up with out, put it out, and every day carry it back and put it away. It was dreadful. Literally, it wasn't horrible. I know some of you were like, "Ken, you should come to my job." It was just one of those tasks that was like, "Oh, we have to do the sign again. Oh, you have to do the sign again." Every single day. One day, we were carrying it, and imagine a 25-foot banner, and we're carrying it, we're holding it, and there were just 2 of us, and we ended up deciding to go like this because it was really windy that day. Super brilliant idea, right? The one guy in front of me is holding it like this. Now imagine we're walking through a car lot full of brand new cars. He's holding it like this, and I'm holding it like this, trying to hold it as we go. I've got one hand up like this one, and as we're walking, a 25-mile-an-hour wind gust hits us, and it picks up the banner. The guy's arms go like this, and he lets go because he can't hold on. And I am like Mary Poppins flying through the air, trying to hold on to this thing. And I'm like, "Oh, call my mama," you know. And I pull it back down to the air to save the new cars from being destroyed. And I dreaded the banner. Do you have that in your work or in your life? Just the thing, the yearly audit, you know, you go to work and then your boss is like, "Well, it's that time of year, it's time for the yearly audit," and you're like, "Oh," because you know the next week or 2 is going to be spent with a bunch of number crunchers who you're going to have to report everything that you've done, and it just you dread it, right? Some of you moms, you dread when the laundry basket gets full, right? I mean, it just is like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so tired of laundry. I have folded these clothes 1,000,000 times. There are all kinds of things that we dread in our lives, in our place of business, in our home lives, in our work. This morning, we are about to jump into the book of Joshua and find something that I think is one of the most dreadful things I could ever think of having to do, all right? So it's not what you think it is, probably, but we're about to jump into Joshua chapter 5. And I just want you to have in your mind how dreadful what we're about to jump into would really be, all right? So if you guys want to get to Joshua chapter 5, we have been in this series called Courageous Lessons from the Life of Joshua. And we've been talking about what does it mean to be a courageous person. And what are some of the values that courageous people have, and how do they live out their life that's different from other people? And this morning, I want to look at a kind of a trait that courageous people have that I think you and I can embody and put it into our own lives, the way that we live out our day-to-day life, and it could make a huge difference in every single area of your life. So let's jump to Joshua chapter 5, verses 1 through 15. Now we're going to read a lot of scripture today, so stay with me. All right, everybody good with that? Don't let me lose you. All right, here it goes. Joshua 5, starting with verse 1. Now when all the Amorite kings west of the Jordan, and all the Canaanite kings along the coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan before the Israelites until they had crossed over, their hearts melted in fear, and they no longer had the courage to face the Israelites. Now, I read this little passage right here because I need you to hear, before we move on from it, before we move on into verse 2, I need you to hear for a second what is happening here, all right? Do you remember last week we talked about the Israelites coming across the Jordan. The priests take the Ark of the Covenant and they walk up, they march up to the shore of this river. Picture our river, right? It's flooding. They walk up, and when they walk up, the wind begins to blow and the river stops flowing. And it walls up. There's a wall of water on one side, and on the other side the water flows down to the Dead Sea. And they begin to walk across, and the land is dry as they walk across. Huge miracle. This is a moment that is full of a ton of significance for Israel. We'll talk about some of the significance, but I want you to hear something because it will become important to later on in our discussion here, that at this moment, what has happened, what the Israelites have done, this walking across this dry river, has scared the bejesus out of all of these other people, right? All these other people groups that live on the other side of the Jordan River, where they're walking into kings and cities and all these people who could come and attack them, could come and do something to the Israelites. These people have all had this fear struck into their hearts, right? And this is why it becomes important. At that time, the Lord said to Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again." And so Joshua, wait, did you guys? Oh wait, okay. At that time, it can't be right. The Lord said to Joshua, "Make flint knives and circumcise the Israelites again." Did you get? Is that what yours says right there? Joshua was supposed to circumcise these guys, these adult men. So Joshua, look at this, verse 3. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the Israelites at Gibeath-Haaraloth. Let me just stop for a moment there. It was funny, Kent asked me, "What songs do you want me to sing this week?" And I said, "Well, I'm talking about circumcision, so, whatever fits with that." I don't know what you're supposed to sing about circumcision. I don't even have it. Whatever. Anyway, so I actually had a vasectomy. You adults know what that is, right? Because I have 4 kids really quickly. Someday I'm hoping to preach at a men's conference, and because I have some really funny stories from that operation. But what you need to know, I know you're like, "Kent, you're sharing entirely too much right now." What you need to know, thanks for laughing, Jenny. What you need to know from this particular event is that I had only a general anesthetic in this moment, and so I, felt some things, and I can tell you with complete certainty that I would rather you remove my eyelids with a rusty dull knife than to be circumcised at the age of 37, all right? I'm just telling you, there are a lot of things that I know you're like, "Kent, listen, it's in God's Word, I have to deal with it, all right? It's not my fault, blame Jesus." But there are a lot of things that I would rather go through than to have to, as an adult man, be circumcised. Men, just for a moment, consider what's happening here. Just put yourself in this position. They don't have general anesthetics at this point in time, right? They don't have good, clean, sterile. This is what you have. Joshua has just gone over and taken a piece of flint, and he's knocked off some of the flint. He's gone, "Well, all right, Kent, you ready?" You're like, you'd be over there hiding in a tent dressed up like a woman, wouldn't you? "Oh, I don't know where Kent is." That's what I'd be doing, because I'd be hiding out, baby. You would never find me again. I would have defected and said, "This is what's happening." I want you to get the picture in your head. Somehow God has looked at them and said, "Joshua, it's crazy to me. This is that moment that you would dread, right? Do you get it? This for these Israelites has to be a dreadful moment." Israel would be incredibly vulnerable at this point. There was Israel has used this in a tactic previously. They had used circumcision. It seems funny, but they used it as a war tactic in a previous instance. There was a grandson of Abraham. Do you guys know who Abraham is? Remember, God spoke to him. He was really old, had a baby. There's a grandson of Abraham named Jacob. Jacob has a daughter named Dinah. Dinah is out. They have come to this new land. And this guy named Shechem comes along. And he, because there's some children in the audience, I'm going to say this in a nice way, he takes advantage of her without her consent. You get it, adults? What I'm saying? He takes advantage of this woman without her consent. Shechem goes back. I mean, you just imagine for a moment. I don't think I can even picture it or get what's going on, but the violence that is involved with that, the complete stripping of a person's dignity in that moment. I mean, right? You get the picture. Dinah goes back to her family. They find out what's happened. Shechem, this guy who has taken advantage of this poor woman in this way, he comes and he says to Jacob, hey, I'd like to marry your daughter, Dinah. If I'm the dad, I go, marry my daughter. You know, like, you're in trouble, buddy. But this is the moment they come. Shechem says, I want to marry Dinah. And Jacob is stuck with having to make a decision. And so Jacob's sons come along, Dinah's brothers, and they say this to Shechem. They say, Shechem, here's the deal. If you will, if all of your men in your town, because Shechem was the prince of this town, if you and all of your men will get circumcised, right? Because we're all circumcised. It's part of what it means to be Hebrew, to be a child of Abraham. If you guys will all get circumcised, then you can marry our sister. So Shechem goes back. He's a shrewd businessman. Jacob has all kinds of huge flocks. He seems to be a very wealthy farmer rancher. Shechem goes back and he says to the men of the city, guys, boys, I got a proposal for you. I think we can become rich. Have you ever had somebody try to sell you Amway? This is like a weird perverted version of Amway. He's like, we can become rich right here and now if we all get circumcised. Right? I mean, he probably says it kind of quiet and has them sound. These guys all come together and they decide that it's worth it. It's worth becoming circumcised so that Shechem can marry Dinah. They can join the two dynasties together and they can become wealthy beyond measure. Dinah is taken off a little bit into a camp. We don't know where she's at, a tent. But all the men in Shechem all go through this act of becoming circumcised, right? You get it? 3 days into it. These men have been cut up. They are hurting. They are swelling. They are sitting in their lazy boy with a bag of frozen peas on them, right? I know from personal experience, this is what they're doing. And all of a sudden, Dinah's brothers sneak into the city and they go house to house and they murder Shechem and the entire city full of men. They bring war upon them in this moment where they are weakened from their circumcision. You get it? This, I want you to just understand, like, it's easy for us to talk about. We live in this world that's full of medical miracles and wonders, and we take, when they did this to our children, when we had our children circumcised, they just put this like little rubber band thing on them and it's done. I don't know how it works, don't ask me, it was weird. It's not an easy process. These guys are going to be in pain for days. The people of Shechem were so weak that a few men are able to come in and just wipe them all out. Do you get it? This is the kind of thing that circumcision brings. It's fearful. It's scary. It's probably going to bring infection to them. And I know you're thinking, Ken, I've heard all I need to know about circumcision at this point, right? But I want you to understand what these guys are going through. This is why it's so important. You see this up in verse 1 and 2. You remember I said, we're just reading this. But this is why it's so important that there is a fear in the land of the Israelites. God has used the drying up of the Jordan to strike a fear in the people so that the Israelites can come through and they can perform this ritual and they can go through the act of circumcision without having to worry about being attacked. This is a big deal. Let's read on. I know, I've just set the stage, okay? We're going to get to the point of all this in a moment, all right? I know you're going, I don't know how he's going to pull this one out. Circumcision, that's a weird one to talk about today, Ken. Here we go. Verse 4. Now this is why he did so, all right? Now, when it said they were going to circumcise them again, it did not mean these guys had already been circumcised once and they're going to be circumcised a second time. What it means is that circumcision had left Israel. We're about to hear that. We're going to get a history lesson. All of those who came out of Egypt, this is why he did so, all those who came out of Egypt, all the men of military age died in the wilderness on the way after leaving Egypt. All the people that came out had been circumcised, but all the people born in the wilderness during the journey from Egypt had not. Do you get the picture? Israelites have come out of Egypt. They were in slavery, they come out of there. The ones who came out had been circumcised, but the ones who came out also chose not to circumcise their children. Verse 5. All the people who came out had been circumcised, but the people who were born in the wilderness during the journey from Egypt did not. Verse 6. The Israelites had moved about in the wilderness 40 years until all the men who were of military age when they left Egypt had died, since they had not obeyed the Lord. If I had my Bible open right now, which I do, I would underline those words, since they had not obeyed the Lord. right? These people have left, they lived 40 years in the desert, and after leaving Egypt, they went through incredibly miraculous circumstances, and in the moment, they choose not to obey the Lord. Let's keep reading. For the Lord had sworn to them that they would not see the land he had solemnly promised their ancestors to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So he raised up their sons in their place. And these were the ones Joshua circumcised. So you get it? There's this people, this generation, who's been completely disobedient to God. And there's another generation that has come up, and they are being obedient to God. And so God asked Joshua to circumcise these people. And these were the ones Joshua circumcised. They were still uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way while they were in the desert. And after the whole nation had been circumcised, they remained where they were in camp until they were healed. There is, in Numbers chapter 26, verse 51, there's a count of all the Israelite men that we have, and that Moses gives us. And what we're told is that there were 601,730 men in the Israelite numbers. All right? I want you to just where do you even put all of the foreskins? You know what I mean? I mean, this is like, I know I have a weird thing, but you have to think, this is like a nightmare. Can you picture it? 601,000 men? These are military men. These are strong, big. I've worked my whole life. I've had to take care of everybody. These guys go, and Joshua gets enough flint knives to cut their foreskins off. Yeah. This is crazy to me. As I'm reading this, I'm telling you, I'm thinking, okay, why am I preaching on this again? You know, like I'm studying for the sermon. I'm going, what do you do with that one? And I asked this question, that I think helped me start to kind of piece this together. Why is this so important to God? Don't you wonder that? 730,000 men. Why is this so important to God? Why does he want to put them through that? And men, wouldn't you be asking, you'd be like, can we get it? Just go back and ask him one more time, Joshua, right? Like, let's make sure that's what he said before you do that, all right? 730,000 men. Why is it? That's the big question. Why is this so important to God? To answer that, we're going to have a quick history lesson. Trust me, after this we get to the point of all this, okay? We're kind of building this argument. We're going to go to Genesis chapter 17. I have a pretty long passage of scripture, one more, and then we're going to knock this thing out, all right? So here it goes. Stick with me if you would, please. Genesis 17, 1 through 14 says this. When Abraham was 99 years old, and that's old, right? I mean, this guy, he's like at the end of retirement age. But listen to what God says to him. The Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you and will greatly increase your numbers. Abraham has only had one child at this point. He's only had one child, and that child was not even with his wife Sarah, but God is about to talk about what he's going to do with Sarah. If we can go to the next slide. Abraham fell face down, and God said, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abraham. Your name will be Abraham. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham. For I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. Do you hear what God is saying to him? Most of you know this story. I get it, I know. But I want to refresh your mind. He's saying, I'm making a covenant with you. We don't talk about covenants very often in our culture, but the idea of a covenant is just a legal agreement between two parties, all right? He is making an agreement with Abraham that if Abraham is faithful to him, and he's going to put another requirement on it, that he will make him fruitful. That out of Abraham's loins will come nations and kings and all of these people. Let's go ahead and go. It says, I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for the generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. The whole land of Canaan. Now this is where we get to start some stuff that's kind of important to us. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give you as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. This is the moment that the Israelites are at right now. Do you know that? Maybe you don't understand, but they've been out in this desert. They've crossed the Jordan River, and the land that they've now come into is the land of Canaan. Abraham is actually in the land of Canaan, but he's a foreigner there. And this promise is made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years earlier to Abraham. The Israelites that have crossed the Jordan are now at the precipice of this covenant coming to pass. This promise that God has made coming to pass. This is huge. Let's go on. Then God said to Abraham, "As for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you, for the generations to come. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you. The covenant you are to keep. Every male among you, listen, must be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you." This thing, this weird action that they're being asked to undergo is the thing that is the symbol of the covenant between God and Abraham. And one more slide. For the generations to come, every male among you who is 8 days old. See, this is when it was supposed to happen. It was supposed to happen when they were 8 days old. Scientists have actually studied circumcision. They found the 8th day is the best day to perform surgery, to do any kind of activity where you cut into a child's body, because on that day, their levels of, I think it's called thrombosin, double. And it is a chemical inside of their blood that helps them deal with clotting and kind of heal from surgery. And so this is the day, God says, on the 8th day, those who are not of your offspring, you need to do this to those who are born in your household or bought with money from a foreigner. Those who are not of your offspring, whether born in your household or bought with money, they must be circumcised. And listen to this. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh, this is the key. This is the point. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. The word for covenant in Hebrew is berith. Oftentimes it's accompanied with karat berith. Karat means to cut. Berith is a word for the grains that are used to feed a sacrificial animal. Right? So the words that kind of associate with this are this idea of cutting a sacrificial animal. The Jewish people, this was cool when I started studying this. The Jewish people will take an animal and they would cut an animal in half. They would kill it, they'd sacrifice it, they would cut it in half, and they would lay it on the side, and then the parties who were making a covenant together would walk through the two halves of the animal. Does this make sense to you? They would walk through it, and they would make a deal with one another, they would strike a covenant with one another, that if one of them broke the covenant, what happened to the animal would happen to the one that broke the covenant. Do you get it? This is, karat berith means to cut a covenant with someone. The covenant that God cuts with Abraham is that he will be their God. He will take them into this land. But every single one of his offspring has to have their parts circumcised. Right? And he says, whoever does not do this, if they have not been circumcised, they will be cut off from their people. You get it? God is cutting this covenant with Abraham. We are in this moment. If we could stop there and fast forward back to the future to Joshua, and we see him and the Israelites, they've broken off all these foot knives. They are all hiding. They find out that I'm wearing the wig, and they're like, "Get out here, Wagner." And they are ready to circumcise all of these people. Do you know what this moment holds for them? This is the moment where these people begin to turn everything around that their parents have done, and they begin to identify with God as the people of God. This is the moment where God is about to use them to take the land of Canaan. This is so huge. They are about to have their entire identity changed by this moment. Why would they ever agree to undergo such a dreadful kind of event in their life? It's because in this moment, God is saying to them, "I will be their God." They're saying to him, "We want to be your people. Take this, and if we are ever unfaithful to you, then you cut us off like we've been cut off," right? It'll be the most painful, dreadful thing that you can ever imagine, to be removed from you. I have a buddy who, he had a child that was born with several defects and was in the NICU. It's the ICU for babies. And I would never wish this upon even my worst enemy, you know? If you know people like that, where they watch their child, they're in there, and for a month or so, they went to the hospital every day, were with their child, and she passed away very shortly after that. And I remember the grieving that they went through, and watching them, and sitting with them, and hugging them, and them crying, and just having to say to them, you know, it's okay to not be okay right now. And my buddy went out and he did something that I think a lot of parents do who go through this kind of thing. It's kind of odd to maybe some of us who haven't gone through it, but they went and got tattoos with their baby's name on them. Yeah? It was kind of weird because you think about it and you think, well, why would you do that? It's not, he doesn't need it to remember. I mean, for the rest of his life, every single day, there's not going to be a day, I can guarantee you this. If you've lost anybody close to you, you know there's not a day you don't go through without thinking about that person. Why did he get the tattoo? Because there is something powerful about making a physical movement with your body and to memorialize something great that's happened in your life. And I don't mean great in the sense of like it's good. I mean great in the sense of it is a moment that continues to echo and ripple in your life. You get that? These Israelites are in the moment where God is about to do something great, and they, in that moment, are asked to make a physical move, to be circumcised, to replace the faith what their parents had done in the desert. What their parents had done in the desert, their faithlessness in the desert, and their fear, to replace it with faithfulness. Their parents had replaced faithfulness with fear. These men courageously returning to God in faithfulness. This is an act of courage, is it not? That these men would go up and they would undergo the knife, undergo the surgery to say, we identify with you, God. We are yours. We will make ourselves weak. We will make ourselves vulnerable. We will put ourselves in potential danger of infection and death. We don't care what it takes. We are surrendering to you right here and now. My dad, I remember him saying to me, when I was maybe 8, maybe you've said this to your kids. I can remember it real clearly for some reason. We were sitting out front of in a Dillon's parking lot. Dillon's is a grocery store. We're sitting in the parking lot. My mom had run in to get milk and eggs or something. And my dad looks back at us in our green 1982 Ford station wagon. And he says to us, boys, I am so worried about the world that you're going to grow up in. Anybody say that to your kids ever? He's just said, I'm so worried about the world that you're going to have to grow up in. And I'm afraid for what it's going to look like and how, the kinds of things that you're going to have to endure. My life has been relatively easy. We've had it good, but I'm afraid that it's going to get really bad. Our world is getting bad and worse every day, right? I mean, there are people getting shot in churches. You know what I mean? Like there are people taking advantage of young people horrific ways. There are people who are young people who don't even know what they're getting into, who are rioting and murdering and killing and stealing and lying and hustling and all of these things, right? There's drug abuse that's rampant, alcoholism. There's some of you in here who struggle with the fact that you go to the bottle every night to kind of make it through your day. And nobody in here knows it, right? Our worlds, our marriages are struggling, our home life is struggling. We don't know how to raise our kids anymore. There are so many things on the front that are just almost unbearable. And I look at my kids now and I think, oh, what is it going to be like for you guys? This is what I'm having to go through. What is it? I'm like turning the table, becoming a dad a little bit, right? And I'm worried about it. Do you know what the solution is to our problems as a country, as a people? The solution is not a different politician in our offices. Now, while that would be good, and it'd be nice to have somebody who may be aligned with your ideology a little bit more, I'm here to tell you they're not going to be much different than their predecessors, right? And we're already in a hot pot, yeah? The answer is not going to be in legislating more morality, although I'm not against that. I would love for our nation to be more moral. Do you know what the answer is going to be? It's going to be that we return to God in courageous ways, and that we make big steps towards Him that are bold moves, where we repent of our own personal sins instead of pointing out other people's sins. You guys know the judgment, the decision that was made in the Supreme Court recently. On Facebook, it's like everybody is celebrating that God decided not to flood the earth again. There are rainbows everywhere, and it is, I see Christians who are getting into, some of them are laying down on it, and some of them are like raising their hackles, and I think probably in a week, everything's going to feel like it was last week a little bit, But I think we think that the solution is in fighting. Do you know the solution doesn't start with me trying to make somebody a better version of their current self? That's not what we need. I need people who will come, you need people who will come to the cross, and we will all drop ourselves at the cross. And we will choose to lose our complete identity for the identity that Christ gives us. This is what the Israelites were doing. Don't miss it. Their circumcision is them saying, we are no longer the people that were in the desert. We are no longer those people who have rebelled and have disobeyed for years. We drop it all here and now. And whatever it takes. You do whatever it takes, God, to make us your people. We will hear in the book of Joshua, if you were to continue to read, that it will tell us that in this moment, the reproach of Egypt was rolled back off of the Israelites. The reproach being their disobedience. The reproach being them being people who were a slave mindset, that they were lost in all of that. It gets rolled back. And I am here to tell you that rollback didn't happen for long. But there is a way to have it happen for all of eternity that I believe is the fulfillment of the everlasting promise that God was giving there in that covenant. And it is through the person of Jesus that we could have the reproach of our old life be rolled back for all of eternity. Folks, I kind of was thinking about two different groups in this place. One group is the group that has never made a decision to really follow Jesus. They've never made a decision to really come home to Him and say, I'm all yours. I surrender it all. I leave it all behind. And there's another group of us who have lived our entire lives coming to church and being a part of an organization like this, an organism like this, and we have never really surrendered to Jesus. Like, you've claimed Him, you've bought into it, you've even maybe professed Him or raised your hand at a worship thing, but you have never really said, it is all yours. My money, my influence, my time, my heart, my mind, my hands, every single part of me is yours. See, I have noticed in my kids lately this mentality in them. I hope you haven't had to deal with this, but I bet you have as a parent. My kids do this thing where they go, everybody hates me. Have your kids ever done that? Or they'll be like, I always mess up. I'm the worst at it. And in those moments I care, and I try to help them understand that you're not the worst, or not everybody hates you. But something we have started talking about with them is that that's a victim mentality. Yeah? That's the mentality that everything is always against me. Everybody always wants to get me. I'm a victim in this life, and I'm just, everything is all coming down on me. And we have tried to start to replace the victim mentality in their heads with the idea that you could be a champion. Because the difference between a victim and a champion is just that a victim thinks all these things are happening to them and there's nothing they can do about it. And a champion has the exact same things happen to them, and they step up to the plate and they do something about it. Right? It's affected me whenever I start to become a victim. I can hear myself talking to my own kids going, are you a champion, Wagner, or are you a victim? Right? And I go, man, I want to stand up and be a champion. Today, I don't know which boat you find yourself in. There are really three groups of people in here. There are people who are totally sold out to Jesus, have already surrendered their lives to Him at the cross. And those people right now are praying for the rest of it. And their hearts and minds are going, oh, Jesus, let somebody make that decision today because it's the best decision they could ever make. You see, I don't think we need more laws. I don't think we need more legislation. I don't think we need better politicians in office because they're always going to be corrupt. People are always going to go their own ways. What we need is for us, it needs to start with us, for our entire heart to be transplanted and for us to find a new life in Jesus. This morning, I want to call on you and say, this is the most exciting time in the world to be Christian. Do you know that? We live in a time when there are more people who don't know Jesus than ever before. We have an opportunity to share Christ with them. There's all this fresh soil out there ready to be planted and ready to be harvested. But it's going to take, I feel like lines are being drawn in the sand, where it is time for us as Christians not to get on our moral high horse, but to get on our humble, lowly, surrendering to Christ course. I don't know, maybe it's a mule. I don't know what it was. But that we would surrender to Him. And I mean surrender everything. That we would just say, I have nothing left, it's all yours, I give everything to you. And I'm telling you, church, that is the moment when we will start to see huge change in our culture. It will not be, we don't need more gun laws, we don't need lack of gun laws, right? We all know it's not a finger that pulls the trigger, really, it's a heart, right? That's a heart issue, isn't it? We know that alcoholism is a heart issue. It's a sad brokenness that needs hope found in Jesus. There is healing, there is salve that is found in the Bible and the Word of God and the death and resurrection of Jesus, that He can give you a new life. And this morning, I guess I just want to ask you in a real way to ask if there are people in here who are courageous enough to say, I have to start surrendering. I don't need a better version of me. I don't want to be a victim anymore of just saying, oh, woe is me, the world is bad, what are we going to do? I want to be a champion. Becoming a champion starts with surrendering to Jesus. And just saying, I'm willing to do whatever, whenever, whatever it takes. I just want to give it all. Folks, the line has been drawn in the sand for us. And I personally am thankful for it. It is a moment for the church not to rise up and bash people, but to wander out into the streets and serve people. This week, Miss Clara came up, and it was super cool. This lady showed up and said, hey, I have all these pots and pans that I don't know what to do with. Can I donate them? And I said, I think, but let me just call our ladies and make sure that's okay. So I called Miss Clara, called Miss Wanda, and they both said, yeah, that's great. Let's have them donate. We'll take whatever. And Clara said, yeah, actually there's this person in the church that I know needs some, they're new and they need some stuff. And so she said, we'll be up today, we'll pick it up and give it to them, right? And I loved how in that moment she's not bashing somebody over the head. She is joining side by side with them and walking through life with them and helping them and drawing them closer to Jesus, helping them see Jesus in her. Church, that's what we have to be. I am telling you, if your life has been ruined, if your life is a mess right now, you don't need a better version of you. You need an entirely new life. This morning, I want to offer to you, if you need the new life, to come forward, to do whatever it takes. Be courageous and brave like these men were. I can't believe they underwent that surgery. It's nuts. I can't believe God asked them to. It's nuts. But they did it because they were completely courageous, completely brave, completely willing to do whatever it takes to replace the faithfulness and fear of their parents with complete faithfulness. This morning I want to pray, and then we're going to sing the song, and I want to offer to you, if you need to come up here and find new life in Jesus, I want to offer you to come to this side. If you're somebody who needs just to reconnect with God, really needs like some prayer, needs to just submit your life and surrender to Him again, I want to invite you to come up to this side so we can be praying with you and walking through this. Let me pray, and then we'll invite you to come forward. God, I pray that this morning you would take a hold of people's hearts and their minds who need to find that healing, that new life. God, I know that there are people in here this morning who are far from you, who have been working on finding their way back home to you. And this morning, God, I just pray that maybe this might be the morning for them. This might be the morning that they drop their addictions, that they drop their hopelessness, that they drop their fears, that they drop their sense of failure, that God, that they come and say to you, I don't know how to fix my marriage. I I don't even know what to do anymore. And that God, they would drop all of that at the cross and find that you are enough for them. Jesus, that they would find that you are enough to give them hope and new life, and that you can rescue them, and that you can breathe into them things that they have never, ever even thought were possible. Jesus, this morning I pray for those people, that they would be courageous and make that decision. God, I pray for the rest of us, that you would help us to make a decision to sincerely follow you. That this would not be our rallying cry to try to increase morality in our nation, but that instead we would come to you and surrender all to you and say, we need to see a move of God Almighty in our lives, and so we offer ourselves to you. This morning, God, I pray that as we come and we surrender to you, that you would open up the gates of heaven and flood this place with your Spirit. Love you, Jesus. It's in your name that I pray.